Hey everyone, it's Hayes, and in today's video we're going to be doing a review of the Miraculous Ladybug game, Rise of the Sphinx. Now I know the game came out quite a while ago and I finished it quite a while ago, but the reason I haven't been able to do the review for a while is because first of all, everything with Miraculous happened, many episodes came out and they've only really just stopped. Or maybe by the time this video goes out we'll have a new airing date, who knows by this point. The show is full of surprises, as always. And also, second of all, even if Miraculous stuff wasn't going on, I've had some things going on in my life. I went away twice, once to Edinburgh, once to London. I also had some messy, I'll describe it as messy PhD stuff going on, but we've managed to get it all sorted now, so I can relax a little bit. So yeah, I would have liked to have got this review out sooner, however at the same time I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing that I had to wait a bit, you know. I feel like sometimes I'm a bit too early when I do my episode reviews and what happened in the episode hasn't always sunk in yet, and I often change my mind. Like for example, in my Destruction review I think I gave it like a 7 or an 8 and now I'm more like, it's like a 5 because I ended up hating it. I quite liked it the first 2 times I watched it, but now I've really thought about it and I'm like, ugh. So yeah. So I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing, and I think this review is coming at a good time. It's coming up to Christmas and some of you may be asking for it for Christmas from your parents. I know a lot of you are quite a bit younger who watch me and can't purchase the game yourself. You'd have to ask someone else to buy it for you. So I thought doing this review before Christmas was a good idea. So a little disclaimer before we start the video. I played the PS5 version of the game, the PlayStation 5 version of the game, and I also played the Ultimate version of the game. I don't believe there's much difference between the Ultimate version and the normal version of the game, other than you start with 3 new suits for Ladybug and Cat Noir. Well, 2 suits for Ladybug, 1 for Cat Noir, 3 altogether. I believe the rest of the game is exactly the same, but it may differ between platforms. I'm not sure. From what I've heard from other people who have played it on Xbox and Switch and PC, which I think were all the other platforms, it seemed like the game was intended to be played on a PS5 or a PS4. However, I haven't played it on those platforms, so I can only speak to my experience of playing it on the PlayStation 5. If you played it on Switch and the game played differently for you, please let us know down below so we can have a good, cohesive, all-rounded view of the game on different platforms. But I don't know because I've only played it on the PS5. I want to review the game, but not that in depth. I gotta replay it on every single console known to man. Okay, I played the PS5 Ultimate version of the game. That's where I'm coming from, so if you have a differing opinion on the game because it handled differently on the Xbox or on PC, on Switch, that might also play into it depending on your experience you had on that console. So yeah, and also of course, as always, this is always my opinion. If you disagree with me, that is fine. Everything is subjective, but I always say besties don't always agree with each other, but besties always respect each other's opinions. So if you disagree, that's fine, but I would ask for you to please respectfully disagree. So whilst this is all my own opinion, I would like to think I have somewhat an informed opinion on talking about video games. Even though I've never made a video reviewing a video game, it feels like to me I've been playing / watching people play video games my whole life. I have 3 brothers, only 1 games console. I can't play on it all the time, so I used to watch my brothers play when it wasn't my turn, when my dad was still around. I remember he used to print off the cheats to get everything in the old Tomb Raider games back on PS1. I've played on all 5 of the PlayStations. I think the first like handheld console I had was the Game Boy Advance. I've had a Nintendo DS. At the minute I have a Nintendo Switch as well. I love gaming. I sadly don't have as much time for it as I used to because PhD, PhD just taking over everything. But I'm hoping once it's over I can really dive back in and get on it. I feel like I'm missing out on so many games. Like I used to like play about 3 or 4 games at once, and at the minute I'm just like, I can only really play 1 at the minute, which is sad because I love gaming, but I just do not have the brain space for it. And I also feel like I have an informed opinion because I have also been trained to write for video games. I have sadly not ever written for a video game yet, but it is definitely an ambition of mine to be on a story team for a video game one day in the future maybe, because I love them so damn much. I'd absolutely love to, that'd be amazing. And also further than that, I am also looking at video games as parts, not whole, but as in part of my PhD. So I have some background academic knowledge as well on video games. So even though this is all going to be my own opinion, I do feel like it is somewhat an informed opinion that is coming from years of experience playing video games, my training in how to write them, and also in part due to my PhD. So you can still disagree with me though. Just because my opinion is more informed does not necessarily mean you are wrong. So don't worry about it. So, okay. Overall, I don't think it was an absolutely awful game. I did think the game was fun at times, but it does get repetitive and boring quite quickly. And I feel like for the price of the game, just because of how it was kind of more of an expensive game, to be honest, I don't particularly feel that the price reflected what we ended up getting, what the product was, you know. Did you just fall over? I swear to God. You have no spinal support. However, I know what you're all going to say, well, hey, games are repetitive, that's their nature. Yes, you are correct. But when a game is super repetitive, what you want the game to do is to repeat the same things you've learned, but build on the skills and make it harder. So, and it does do this to a slight extent, where there's like, I believe in the max level you get some of the people running at you, and I think it happens in the Chronica level, and you have to dodge them, you can't just attack them. And then in the Mayura level they introduce the like healing people, so you gotta defeat them first before you can defeat the rest, they're gonna heal everyone else. And then in the final level you have the one that has like the cloud over it, and you have to parry them before you can attack them. So it does slowly build on the skills, but for the length of the game I didn't feel like it was enough. And when a game is this high in price, I either want it to be really long or I want it to have the replayability. Now this game isn't very long, so it really needs that replayability factor. And don't get me wrong, it is built into the game. Like if you go back to that first level when you're, so it's the Mr. Pigeon level, there are certain things you can't do yet, and you don't need them to finish the level, but if you want to collect all the orbs and macarons, you do have to go back after you finish the game and replay the levels, which is fine, so the replayability is built in. However, I just don't feel like the game is interesting enough to make me go and do that, basically. Like, the replayability is built in, but the game isn't fun enough to make me go and do it. So, yeah. I don't feel like it's worth the price, mainly for those two reasons. And just talking about like the playability of the game as well, I understand it's a game for children and therefore the combat isn't, you know, super difficult, which is fine, but I just thought it was very strange. So for example, because you can switch between Ladybug and Cat Noir, whenever, so let's say you're playing as Ladybug, if you're running out of hearts as her, you can just switch back to Cat Noir and he'll have full hearts. And between each fight, you regenerate the hearts anyway. So at no point during the game, like I didn't die once, but I mean I fell off buildings, but other than that I didn't die in fights because of the combat and because I always regenerated hearts. And don't get me wrong, like so at the minute I'm playing Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, and in order to regenerate hearts in that you usually need to eat food or something that will regenerate the hearts. But in this game it's just you finish the fight and woo, you got them back. I don't think that's necessarily a bad game mechanic. I really love the Uncharted series and the Batman series, and they gradually re-heal you. You don't need to eat food to get better or take some sort of like medication like in the Resident Evil games to get better. But like there's a lot more at stake in those ones, if that makes sense. Like for example in the Uncharted games, like the screen stops going black and white as you die if you can't get to safety and stuff like that. So it kind of shows it better and there's more at stake. You have to be actually able to be good at using the combat in the Uncharted and Batman games in order to progress and survive. Whereas in the Miraculous game, the only move you really need most of the time is the attack button, basically. Because you're regenerating those hearts between each fight, I never once felt like basically motivated to try and like defend, like try and parry or try and dodge. Like yeah, I'm gonna lose hearts if I don't do that, but because the game was so easy I didn't really see there being a point in having those moves really in the first place. Whereas in Uncharted, because it's much easier to die. You do have to, you know, take cover more, use different guns, switch them around, try different tactics if you keep dying to try and work out the best way to defeat all these people in this level. Whereas that's not the case with this game. You just attack and attack and attack, run around a bit, and you'll work it out. Maybe it's because it's for kids, but when I was a child I played games for children with combat in that I felt were a lot more difficult than this. So I didn't feel the combat was great. And also, just like a note on the combat, sometimes the controller just didn't respond. I know it's not a problem with the PS5 because my brothers were playing it later on a different game and it was working fine. It seems to just be a problem with the game. It just doesn't always respond to the buttons you're pressing. It was very strange. That's never happened to me before, so that was weird. Again, back to this replayability aspect. Like I said, it is built in, but all the levels are they're basically just the same. They're the same thing over and over again. I don't want to replay it. I don't want to replay the game. I haven't been on the game since I finished filming the last section of it. I haven't been back on it. Not at all. So I'm like, I don't care. The only thing that saved the levels for me was the look of them. So the first level, the Mr. Ramen level, was just like normal Paris, then Soundwave was with musical instruments, then Gamer was like computer stuff, and then Clonica was the weird gold stuff, then Mayura was down in the sewers, which was really cool, and then Hawk Daddy was the Trocadero and up the Eiffel Tower, which was really cool as well. But for those first like 4 or 5 levels, they were all the same. The only thing that saved it for me was the set pieces, basically, because otherwise I think my eyeballs would have started to bleed. Like, I don't know how he did this. Cartoon Apocalypse played the full thing in about 4 hours, which is doable. It's not a long game, don't get me wrong, but he just sat there and did it all at once. I don't know how his eyeballs didn't start dying from, first of all, staring at the screen for so damn long, but also second of all, out of sheer boredom. God. Like, yeah, I'm pretty sure during the live streams I was only there for a bit of it. It got to a point, because the game is so easy, that he would be able to reply to everyone in the live chat whilst he was playing, because that's how easy the game was. So that just goes to show you, like, I was talking during most of the gameplay with zero problem, but again, there are also parts of the gameplay that I sped up and didn't bother talking at all in because I'd run out of things to say, and I'm like, yeah, we're running around. Great. I'd run out of things to say in the levels after the Soundwave level, which was level 2. I don't know. So because all of that has been quite negative, I just want to maybe add in some constructive criticism and maybe suggest, to make the levels more interesting, they could have added aspects of puzzle solving. There was a teeny tiny bit of it in the last level. As you're about to go up onto the Eiffel Tower, there's this bit where you think you need Ladybug first, and she flies up into the air and then comes back down and does nothing. You actually need Cat Noir to move this massive thing for her so she could fly up onto it. I was like, ah, okay, that's cool. But I'm pretty sure that's the only time they've ever done that in the whole game. But they've had more instances of that where you got to switch between them, you need one person to do this and the next to do this, then you got to go back again. That would have been wonderful, but I'm pretty sure it only happens once. And also with stuff like that, with the skills that you can buy, so there's like split into 2 sections. I think it's the heroes and the skills section. I never bought anything from the skills section because you don't need it to finish the game. I don't even really understand why it was there in the first place, if I'm being honest with you. It just seems like a waste of time. So, yeah, didn't really understand why they even bothered including it, to be honest. And the last thing I think I have to say about like the gameplay aspect of it is the camera angle. I talked about this a lot in the game when I was playing, is that it was a fixed camera angle, you couldn't move it. And I don't think that's a good idea for kids games because a lot of kids haven't developed fully their depth perception yet, and being unable to alter the camera angle would really affect their depth perception, and yeah, I don't think it's a good idea for the age level. So yeah, I think that probably annoyed me the most. I'd just say overall, the game wasn't long enough to justify the price tag, and whilst it does have the replayability built in, the game isn't interesting enough to make me want to do it, and I think they just need to add in better elements of gameplay, like maybe some puzzle solving between Ladybug and Cat Noir. Like, that's the only thing I can really think of right now, because as it is in Miraculous, when she gets a Lucky Charm, she often does have to try and like work out a puzzle, so I think that maybe could have helped, possibly, I don't really know. The camera angle wasn't great, and also the parrying in the game was terribly programmed as well. In order to defeat the new enemy on the Hawk Daddy level on the Eiffel Tower, you need to parry them before you can attack them and move on. And often, a lot of the time, it doesn't actually let you do that. So, yeah, not great. So now we're going to talk about the actual visuals of the game. You know, I don't particularly care about the visuals of the show. It's because I just don't. I don't really have a reason for it. I just don't. I'm there to watch the show for the story and the characters and the relationships. I don't usually care how many things look visually, but one thing I have cared about how it looks visually are video games. I don't care about films and TV, but I do care about video game quality, and I thought the backdrops for the most part in this game looked amazing. When did you fall over? Stressing me out, mate. But I did feel the backdrops in the game for the most part looked amazing, both in and out of the levels. Like, the changing backdrops for me were the only thing that saved the levels. It's the only thing I wanted to do was to carry on to see what it looked like next. The sewers looked awesome, the Eiffel Tower looked awesome, and the out of the levels in the Paris bit with the school and the bakery and the park and Adrian's house and the marketplace, whatever, all looked absolutely amazing too. I thought it was great. However, even though the backdrop looked great, like the overall setting looked great, some of the characters looked a bit janky. Max's hair was very, very odd. Adrian looked like Donald Trump, and Luca looked absolutely traumatized. Yeah, and I do kind of wish they had more of the class involved. I know they kept it to an absolute bare minimum, I guess because of money, probably. So I think the only classmates in the game was Marinette, Adrian, Kagami, Luca, Alia, Nino, Chloe, who wasn't around that much in the game, Max, Lila. I think that was everyone. And they also had Marinette's dad, Natalie, Officer, Rincompris, Gabriel, and like a load of extras. Mr. Ramier, Penny, some other people. Yeah, there wasn't a great deal of many people in this game, and whilst I understand it was maybe done to save money, the game just ended up feeling so empty. And I know there's the bit in the game where it's locked down, you're not supposed to be out, okay fine, whatever, that bit was meant to be empty, but otherwise, oh my god, it was deserted. Like, I know they always say in the show, like, oh well, Paris is quieter than it is in real life because all these Akuma attacks and people have moved out of Paris or people stay indoors. Okay fine, whatever, that's your excuse because of the lack of money to be able to animate everyone in Paris and how difficult that would be. Fine, okay. But at least the Paris in the show feels a bit more alive than the one in the game. Oh my god, I felt like I was walking around a ghost town at certain times. Like, there are ways around it. Like, one of my favourite games is Persona 5, and in part of Persona 5, when you're out of the levels, you get to wander around parts of Tokyo. You get to go to Akihabara and Shibuya, and those places are incredibly busy. Most of Tokyo is incredibly busy, and there was no way in hell, they knew straight away, it's like, yeah, we are a big game studio, but there's no way in hell we can animate the amount of people to make it feel like you're in the middle of Tokyo in the middle of the day when everyone's wandering around. Obviously they can't, however they made it feel like that. They put in sounds of other people being around and stuff, like they just, if you've played Persona 5 you know what I mean. Are there many people in the game to make it look like you are in Tokyo? No. But does it feel like it's busy enough that you could be in Tokyo? Yes. This game didn't have that at all. I felt like we were in the town I live in, which is a tiny town in the north of England that no one's ever heard of before. So that's what it felt like. I didn't feel like I was in Paris, so whilst it looked great, I was like, this isn't Paris. Not even the Paris of the show. However, talking about Paris, I felt like the size of the Paris that we got to explore, outside the levels I mean, was of a decent size. I wasn't sure how big of a size we were going to get. I was hoping for like Spider-Man game type size of a level. That would have been cool. Part of me does wonder, would that be too big for the age group this game is aimed for? But part of me is also like, no. One of my favourite games of all time, Spider-Man 2, was released in 2004, which was when I was like 7-8 years old, which was when I was the age group for this game, and I had no problem travelling all around the city to find that girl's damn balloon when I was that age. So I would hope, and plus as well, kids these days are a lot more technologically competent than I was at 8 years old. Like, I didn't learn how to use a computer properly until I was 11, which at the time was probably quite normal. But if a child doesn't really know how to use a computer until the age of 11 now, it's a bit weird. Like my niece, she's 4, she can already use my laptop, she knows what's going on. I would have no idea how to use a laptop when I was 4, but it's because the generation has changed. So I would hope that by now an 8-year-old would be able to play a game like Spider-Man 2 where you get to travel around New York. Where's Spider-Man set? I don't really like Spider-Man anymore, so I don't even know it. I don't mind it, I don't mind it. I prefer Batman personally, but I don't really know. So I would hope so, so maybe if they do the game again. I know this video has been quite negative, but not to a point where I hope they don't do anything ever again. I want to see them do something again. Is that they give us maybe not the Spider-Man size city to play with, but bigger than what we got. You know, what I kind of had hoped for the game is that you could go in everyone's houses, well not everyone's houses, but you know, like the main characters' houses, go up to Marinette's room, you could transform and jump off her balcony and use your yo-yo and grapple onto Notre Dame, something cool like that. Maybe I was hoping for too much, but when it comes to this show I am a bit of an optimist. Usually I'm a pessimist, but when it comes to Miraculous, I want the best for it. So I'm like, yes, this is going to be amazing. And it didn't end up to be, but I did think the size of Paris we got was a decent size, but I feel like if they did this again, it definitely could be bigger and better. And speaking of the outside of the levels, so wandering around outside the levels was probably my favourite part of the game. I love the look in the show with the bakery and the school and the park and stuff. Absolutely loved it. But the only thing you can really do is talk to people, which is cool and all. But I was like, it does also get boring and repetitive after a while. So I would suggest an improvement there is maybe to have some mini games you could play in the neighbourhood with some people hanging around. Like for example with Max, you could maybe play like Ultimate Mecha Strike 3 or the game he comes up with for Gamer 2.0. I've said before, and I stand by this now, that I've always thought that they should make the game from Gamer 2.0 into a proper like Tekken or Street Fighter style video game where you pick heroes and villains from the show and have them fight against each other. It's not the type of game I would play, but I think it's the type of game a lot of people would play and would really enjoy. I think that would be a great idea. But maybe like a mini game of that, maybe you could go meet Kagami in the park and fight Kendo against her, or learn how to play a musical instrument with Luca on the boat. Just something else to make it a bit more exciting, because wandering around was my favourite part, but it also got boring after a while too. So the final bit of this video, I'm going to talk about the story of the game. So the story in general is basically Chloe is willingly akumatized on and off in order to clone her classmates and friends, or not friends, I don't know how we define a friend here, so she can basically upset people to get them akumatized. And after Ladybug and Cat Noir save her once, Mayura's caterpillar comes to take her with the goal of basically Chloe is the most negative person to ever have lived, and her negativity will feed the Senti monster until it can be a beautiful butterfly which will take over all of Paris, and Hawk Daddy can take Ladybug and Cat Noir's Miraculous. That's the basic story of the game. I honestly wasn't expecting much from the story of the game, honestly, but you know, it was fine, it was fine. Wasn't the best video game story I've ever heard of, wasn't the worst. It was fine. Honestly, I wasn't really playing this game for the story, I was playing it more to be like, oh, I can play as Adrien and Marinette, yes! That was really it, to be honest. And basically the whole goal of that story was it was set before Miracle Queen as part of the lead up into why Chloe was akumatized, but obviously not the whole reason, because also part of the reason is that Ladybug picks Kagami to help her because Kagami and Adrien are about to kiss. She does it out of jealousy, even though she knows Chloe would be a better fit, but also at the same time Chloe isn't supposed to be using the bee anymore, so yeah, it's not the only reason why Miracle Queen happens, but it's one of the reasons, which I did think was cool. So overall I thought the story was okay, wasn't expecting so much. However, Chloe did seem pretty darn central to the story, and we didn't actually get to see Cat Noir and Ladybug rescue her, which was just bizarre. Also, I am, whilst obviously it leads into Miracle Queen, I am a bit unsure about if it really is canon or chronological, because Adrien mentions having a party, presumably for his birthday, but we know Miraculous, so at the minute we are finally getting to the end of this year spent together. So Origins is the start of the school year, and each season is about 2 to 3 months. So season 5 we are coming up to the end of the school year, and that's why I think, well, one of the reasons I think episodes 25 and 26 are together called The Last Day. I think it could refer to more than just the last day of school, but this isn't the video to speculate about that. I've made other theory videos about the last day. I think there's more to it, but I think one of the last day things it could mean it's the last day of school before summer, because it's the end of the academic year. So Adrian's birthday is in the bubbler, so that places Adrian's birthday roughly, I would guess, in September, October at a push. And we know the year's not up yet. We are probably in like the more summer months. I would put Miraculous as being in about May/June right now, going into July for the end of this season 5. So it's not time for Adrian's birthday yet. So I'm a bit confused why he's having a party. Also at the end there was an opportunity for, first of all, Hawk Daddy to grab Ladybug's Miraculous, and also an opportunity for Cat Noir to grab Hawk Daddy's Miraculous, and also for Ladybug to take it as well. And no one did. And also one thing that I had really wanted from this game was some Adrien and Marinette interaction. And don't get me wrong, you do get it, but only when the game forces you. So this is kind of another issue I have with it, is that I wish the game would have been split into parts, a bit like an episode of Miraculous works, where we spend a bit of time with Marinette, then it changes scene, we spend time with Adrien, then change scene back to Marinette, and so on like that. It forces you to shift between the two of them. Whereas, okay, first of all, I felt that whereas while you could change between Adrien and Marinette, I often forgot you could, largely because Adrien isn't actually needed for the majority of the game. I believe there's only actually one time you need him, and it's to go and talk to Max. The rest of the game is basically for Marinette. So whilst you need Cat Noir and Ladybug kind of about 50-50 in the levels, maybe not exactly 50-50, but it's definitely more equal. In outside the levels, the Marinette and Adrien isn't equal. Apart from the one instance with Max, you can pretty much play with Marinette the whole time. You don't need Adrien at all. So, seems a bit weird to me. So because of that, unless the game forces them into a dialogue, like when Adrien invites Marinette to this party, you don't actually get to see them interact together. So what I really would have liked is if you play a section with Marinette and then it forces you to change, but then the game changes to Adrien's perspective, you get to play with him, you have to play with him, but during those sections Marinette can go and find Adrien to talk to, and Adrien can go and find Marinette to talk to. That way you can actually get some interaction between them, because unless the game forces it, they never speak to each other during the game, which was just odd to me. And like I said, I definitely feel like the game was basically ignoring Adrien and was like, yeah, you can play as Adrien as like a fun extra thing, but apart from this one instance with Max, you don't actually need the bloke. So, yeah, strange. I mean, I understand she's the main character, but yeah, it's strange. I feel like if they forced it split into sections, like if they did this game again, was it not this game again? If they did another game, I would like to see that, so you can play as both of them and they get, you know, like they can talk to each other and stuff and have like a different objective. Like Marinette's goal in the game is this, but Adrien's goal is this. Like for example, in the game Detroit Become Human, you have like 3 main characters, Connor, Marcus, and one I always forget the name of, but like you play for a bit as Connor, he has one objective, he's a detective, and then you switch to Marcus, who's like gonna try and kickstart this android revolution, and he has a different objective. Then you switch to this lady whose name I don't remember, who's like a babysitter, and she has a different objective, and you get to play as all 3. I feel like that would have been better suited to Miraculous, because Miraculous has more than one main character. So that would have been cool, and it might have opened the doors up for maybe having like, getting to play like an extra level as Alia or something. That would have been cool. That would have been really cool. They didn't do that, and the whole game is pretty much geared to playing as Marinette, which is a little bit sad, to be honest. Like, I don't think Adrien should be the main character of the show. I've made a video on that before, but he is the male lead. He is the second main character, and I do feel like Adrien, not Cat Noir, but Adrien was basically ignored in the video game, which is a bit sad. So yeah. So the ending of the game was also very strange. I understand you get a different ending if you manage to like get really high friendship points with people, which I didn't. But there should be a good, satisfying ending, even if you don't get that. The ending otherwise is very, very strange. I didn't really understand. But okay, so there was a bit of a big lack of conclusion, and overall I would say about 90% of the dialogue in this game wasn't very good. This is going to sound super duper arrogant, but as you all know, I'm a professional writer, and the two things I pride myself on the most in my writing is first of all the pacing of my writing, and second of all the dialogue. When I'm writing my own original stuff, I try my best to keep the dialogue in character but also sound supernatural. And whilst the dialogue in Miraculous doesn't always sound very natural because it's often exaggerated because it's for children, when I write fanfiction for it, I really pride myself on trying my best on getting the characters in the fanfiction to sound as if it's something Thomas Astruc or one of the other writers would write for them in the show. And I feel like a lot of the times, especially for Marinette, a lot of the stuff she said did not suit her character at all, and the rest of the times, and not just Marinette, for a lot of the other characters, the dialogue didn't suit them at all. So yeah. The only person I felt who had good dialogue overall in this game, who I'm going to give the game MVP to, was Roger Raincompris. The person who wrote his dialogue deserves a raise. Oh my god, his dialogue was amazing, it really suited him, it was funny, it brought some life to the game because otherwise I was getting so bored without his dialogue. He was the life and soul of this game, he was wonderful in this game, he was great. Everyone else, no, not so much. So overall, was this a terrible game? No. But do I want to go back and play it? No, to be honest. And would I recommend this game to you if you're thinking of asking it for a Christmas present? Yes, however, I would maybe ask your parents, if that's who you're asking, to maybe wait until there's like a sale on Boxing Day. If the game goes on sale for less than its full price, I would recommend it to you. I would not recommend this game for full price. I do not think it's worth the full price. I'd only recommend it to you if it was on sale. Otherwise, don't buy it. So yeah, I think that's all I have to say. And I'm sorry because I know a lot of that was negative, but I hope with the way I handled that I wasn't overly negative, and I also hope you can see that it was coming from a place of love, basically. I've said this before, I believe it was in the video I did talking about whether or not Miraculous was going to get 12 seasons, and part of me was like, yes, of course I want it to have 12 seasons, this is my favourite TV show, why wouldn't I want it to go on for that long? But also at the same time, you know, when I'm, I don't know, 60, if I live that long, I want to look back on Miraculous and this YouTube channel I had, and I want to be like, wow, Hayes, do you remember that crazy time when you were like 24 and got famous for calling the antagonist of a kid's TV show daddy? What a wild time to be alive! I want to look back on fond memories of it, and I don't want it to get to season 10 and it's the worst thing ever and it's just become terrible because they're milking it for all it's worth, and I'm just like, no. If we're gonna do 12 seasons, let's do 12 seasons well. If we're gonna do video games, let's do a good job and not make it look like a cash grab. All of what I said, even though it was very negative, has come from a place of love because I just want the absolute best for my favourite TV show. I don't want it to crash and burn and fail. As much as I dislike Thomas Astruc because of how rude he is and how he often tries to get fans to fight each other on Twitter, because there'll be a fan who's like, I wasn't the biggest fan of that episode, and he's like, well, you're cancelled then, and he's just horrible to them. As much as I dislike him as a person, I absolutely adore this TV show and I want the absolute best for it. So I've tried my best to not sound so hateful during the video, and I tried to offer some constructed stuff where I could, and I do hope they try again. I love to see them try and do this video game again, but just try a bit better, basically. Try harder next time, please, because I'd love to play another game that's more like Spider-Man-esque, where you play as Marinette and Adrien, they have different objectives and you have more characters and they can transform whenever they want and just go for a fly around the city and help other citizens outside of Akuma attacks. That'd be really cool. I understand it'd be very expensive, I'm not saying it wouldn't be. I know video games are extremely expensive to make, but I'd love for them to try again, and honestly, if we never got another video game, I would be quite sad that in terms of video games, that this is all we got for Miraculous. I know we have the mobile games, but they're not the same, you know what I mean? So yeah, I think that's all I have to say, but of course, besties, if you disagree with me, if you love the game, then I am very happy for you. I wish I could, but I sadly don't. I don't want to lie to you and pretend I enjoyed it when I didn't. Like I said, as much as I love the show, I don't want to lie about it. when I dislike something, I will tell you. You all know I hate Ephemeral and Kuroneko. I think they're the two of the worst episodes of the entire show. And I will tell you if I don't like something. I don't just want to blindly love everything about the show, because I know it's not perfect. It has great qualities, but it's not perfect. Nothing ever is. But yeah, so I hope they try and make another video game, and I hope this time it's a bit better, basically. So those are my thoughts, besties. I'd love to know what you think, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!